You're listening to the Fierce Fatty podcast. I am your host, Victoria Wellesby. This is episode 69, and we're talking about food addiction and binge eating disorder. Let's do it!
Perfect.
I'm Victoria Wellesby, TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and fat activist. I have transformed my life from hating my body with desperately low self-esteem to being a courageous and confident, fierce fatty who loves every inch of this jelly. Society teaches us living in a fat body is bad, but what if we spent less time, money, and energy on the pursuit of thinness and instead focused on the things that actually matter, like if pineapple on pizza should be outlawed, or if the mullet was the greatest haircut of the 20th century. So, how do you stop negative beliefs about your fat body controlling your life? It's the Fierce Fatty podcast. Let's begin. Hello, Fatty. How are you? Are you all right? I'm all right. You all right? Hey, quick trigger warning while I'm thinking about it, that in this episode we're going to be talking about eating disorders, food quantities and different types of food. Also, very brief mention of child sexual assault. So if any of that is not feeling good for you today, then skip this episode because it's a deep one. It's a big one today. Okay, so, yes, I am. What a palaver. What a palaver. This last... Getting this bloody thing set up in my new place. Can you hear Dougal? He's doing his little... on the floor. Getting this new setup in my place. I didn't even realise how... lucky I was before that I just had like the perfect setup without having to think about it. And then in my Airbnb, same. And then here I was like, great, always record videos next to the window for the light. But I'm facing like never eat shredded wheat north, never eat. I'm facing south, never eat west-ish, and it is 12:46 p.m. right now, and the sun, it's a really lovely day. It's normally raining, but the sun is like burning my eye holes out, and I couldn't record the thing there because it was just like white, just impossible. So I've had to move my desk, I've had to move loads of things around, I've had to get lights, and I was right about the video quality of this new 2020 MacBook Air. I googled it, right, and these MacBook Airs, the video quality, something is wrong with it where it just fucking sucks. But it's the same ratio or whatever it is, don't fucking ask me, the same quality as my 2015 Mac, but the 2015 Mac video is like way better. So I was right about the cost of a webcam. It's about $30. I've got one. Should be arriving literally. I could get a knock on my door right now. So next week's video is theoretically going to be higher video quality. So fingers crossed. But that's really annoying about the Mac, isn't it? Rude. I'm just so loyal to Apple. Ugh. Silly. But I've been in my apartment now for a week. I'm loving it. My happiness levels have really increased. It's great. Lots of friendly people in the area. The water pressure in my shower is almost too good. You know when you just have it on the normal setting and then you turn it to go on like the jet setting? I can't put it on the jet setting because the normal setting is so strong that it looks like when I come out of the shower that about 57 layers of skin has been removed from my chest. Like if I put it on the jet one, my lungs would probably collapse. Like that's how strong this shower is. So no weak showers over here. No, it's great. The only thing, okay, I need to talk quiet for this one. So the only thing about this apartment is, so I'm on the top floor, penthouse. It's the fourth floor, so not that fancy. The guy underneath me, so I've met him. He's great, lovely guy. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to work out what the deal is, but throughout the day, there's lots of noises. So there's lots of like, coughing and phlegm stuff, and then there's also like random expressions, like it's like shouts, but sexual shouts. And so I don't know if he's like wanking all day long. That's what I think, okay? This is what I think, that he's quick. Okay, like I wish I could imitate the noise, but I don't know. But I think he's having multiple wanks a day, and I can hear the noise. So that's that's so far. I'm gonna ask him. I'll be like, "Do you hear those shouts during the day?" That's why I'm whispering. I hope he doesn't hear me. But I'm gonna ask him. What is that, and try and get to the bottom of what these noises are. Anyway, kind of the gay area, the great gay village in Vancouver. It's pretty awesome, and there is noise. There is noise about. There is noise afoot. So I did a training video last week, and I kept stopping because I could hear noises, just city life. And then I listened to it back, and I was like, you know what? You can't really hear it. All you can hear are the pitter patter of Dougal's toes on the floor. So I thought maybe I'll just get a rug, or maybe ever so often you might hear Dougie walking around. We'll see how it goes. Like, I've got rugs in the apartment, but I'm in my office area, and there's no rug here. So he's sleeping under my desk currently. So it should be okay for now. Okay, so that's me. I was chatting with a friend yesterday. Hey Maggie, if you're listening. And something that came up, but I thought, do you know what? I wanted to clarify this for you lot, is that the idea about body love versus body neutrality. And I am guilty of using the word like body love your body, all that type of stuff, because it's like a common language. And what I'm actually saying is not thinking about your body. So she's like, what do you think about body neutrality? And I was like, great, like that's what we aim for, right? Just really not thinking about your body, or sometimes thinking that you look good, or sometimes having days where you think that you don't look so good, but overall an appreciation for what your body does, and moving away from a major focus of your life being your body, or judging other people's bodies. And the idea that I see this phrase a lot, all bodies are good bodies. And that can be kind of problematic, because sometimes our bodies aren't good. Sometimes it's difficult to live in our bodies. Sometimes they feel wrong. For example, someone who is trans may feel like their body's not right and not good. And so saying all bodies are good bodies is kind of misleading and erasing the experiences of people living in bodies where it's not, they don't feel good. Or think about someone who's disabled. They may say or feel like their body is wrong, or their body is broken, but maybe they can also appreciate some things about it. And also maybe some people feel like their body is fine, but wishing that their body could do more or be different. And so this idea of loving your body, it's kind of, I use it as like a shorthand, love your body. And really what I'm saying is just don't really spend that much time thinking about it. Like, you can get away from that. You can get away from body checking all the time and thinking that you need to change your body to measure up to what society tells you should be. And really that's where I am, and that's what the goal is to like, I have mirrors in my house, but I rarely look at them unless, I don't know, maybe if I'm drying my hair, or not even if I'm brushing my teeth, but, if I leave the house, maybe I'll have a glance at my hair to make sure that it's not, totally wonky, but, or make sure that my trousers are pulled up, but just not really checking my body and judging it. And sometimes I'll have a look at my body and be like, oh yeah, there's my body. And sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, there's my body. And then sometimes I might be like, there's my body. But mostly it's just nothingness. It's just not a big deal. That's what I'm trying to say. It's just not a big deal, So anyway, so I just wanted to just put that out there, okay? So this friend that I'm chatting to, she worked in an eating disorder center, and we've spoken about that in the past, and it made me realize that I haven't spoken on the podcast that much about the fact that I have had at least one undiagnosed eating disorder, and the most prominent one is binge eating disorder, also abbreviated to BED, binge eating disorder. So I want to talk about that today, and what I experienced and what maybe some people have experienced, and how that can feel like food addiction. And are we addicted to food? And all that juicy stuff. Okay, so binge eating disorder, BED, is kind of seen as the sibling to bulimia. So bulimia is restricting, then eating food, and then purging. And so binge eating disorder is like that, but without the purging behaviors afterwards. And so folks who experience BED may have a compulsion to eat more food than their body currently needs in one session, to the point where it feels like a problem for them and it feels disordered. So as humans, we all binge. Like, it's a normal eating behavior to binge from time to time. So, maybe you have a great dinner and it's just super delicious, and so you eat more than what your body is comfortable with, or maybe you don't realize your body is full, and then all of a sudden it kind of just like hits you, and you're like, oh, I feel really full. I didn't realize I was that full. Or it's a celebration and you eat lots of food. So it's it's a normal part of eating, but it gets to being an eating disorder when it has negative impacts on your life. Okay. So the difference is the restriction. So if you binge, so you have that restriction, and then you have the guilt, and then you might have that feeling of compulsion, or maybe eating alone or eating in secret, and having maybe certain foods that you will eat at that time, and maybe not even enjoying the food or the taste of it, and just it being an automatic thing. So BED is the most prevalent eating disorder in adults, which is a wild, considering hardly anyone talks about it. So when you think about eating disorders, I know for me that growing up, eating disorder meant anorexia. And then I had a personal experience, one of my siblings having bulimia, and so it meant bulimia and anorexia to me. And even nowadays, a lot of the general population would think eating disorder, anorexia, and they won't think of atypical anorexia, so anorexia in a higher weight person. They'll think of anorexia in a thin white woman is what they think of. But eating disorders has many different faces, and there's lots of different types of eating disorders. So BED, well, the reason why I didn't really know about binge eating disorder when I was younger is because it wasn't classified as an eating disorder until 2013. It was classified as a part of other eating disorders, or an eating disorder that doesn't have a name. And actually 1 to 3% of the population have BED, and it's spread equally between men and women. There's not a lot of good information on gender non-conforming, non-binary or trans folks, but we do know that those folks experience eating disorders in general more than other groups, due to the stress of, probably due to the stress of living in a marginalized body. So the difference, a lot of people don't know this, and they want to know the answer to this, but the difference between disordered eating and an eating disorder is the impact that is having on your life. So someone could be engaging in daily restriction and have certain eating behaviors, and it just not be have that much of an impact on their life. And so it might just be they're engaging in disordered eating behaviors, but another person could be engaging in the exact same behaviors, and that could be having a massive impact on their life, and therefore it would be classed as an eating disorder. And it's not always necessary to classify someone as having an eating disorder or not having an eating disorder. It might be helpful for some people, it might not be. But how much, and this goes for anything in your life, how much is this having a negative impact on your life? If it's having a large negative impact on your life, it might be behavior that you might want to change. Maybe, who knows? Everyone's different, right? And I am not a eating disorder counselor or anything like that. So this is, I'm not giving you any advice of what you should or shouldn't be doing, just an FYI. So those who have BED tend to have higher levels of body dissatisfaction and lower self-esteem. It's funny how so many of the things linked to, when we did that episode on stomach amputation surgery, those going in for the surgery had higher levels of body dissatisfaction, lower self-esteem, more larger history with dieting, all that type of stuff. How so many of these things are connected to believing that your body is bad, or believing that the way that you eat is not good. Also, it's linked with being restricted with food, aka dieting, and can be a method for coping with other issues. So it could be a great way to cope with issues if that's the only method that you have at that moment. Okay, so my experience with this is that from a young age, I had a disordered relationship with food. And I had learned that food gives me good things and bad things. So the good things I'd learned that food gave me is that it nourished me. It was a conduit of love and care, because my mum and my dad loved cooking, would feed me, and I'd feel love and care because they would make food and dinner for me. It was exciting. It was the only quote unquote good thing in my life. Like, if I think about my nibblings and the stuff that they do in their life, I'm so fucking jealous of them. I'm so jealous of this 4-year-old and this 1-year-old. The stuff that they do, like go swimming or go to the park, or, imagine pre-COVID times, go into bouncy, housey places, going to the cinema, all those types of things. Like we would have none of that in our family because we were poor, right? We might go to town park maybe a couple of times a year, but it was like a 30-minute walk. We didn't have a car. And I mean, my dad was an alcoholic. My mum was busy working. And when she wasn't working, she was taking care of the household. So there wasn't time for that type of activities. And so food was a great source of joy and fun, and it was good, right? Exciting, and it was yummy, and it helped get rid of boredom, because when we were my mum would work. So when my dad my mum and dad got divorced, I was maybe 7, and so then at that point my mum would go to work, say on the weekends. She would work in the morning on Saturdays, and she would work in the mornings or in the afternoons or whatever, the rest of the week. Sundays she would have a day off. And so on the Saturday morning before she came home at 1. Not that she would play with us when she got home, because she'd be taking care of chores, but we were left to our own devices, and we did we would make up our own games and things like that. But then a part of that would be maybe having food to eat, and also it was fun. So watching a Blue Peter and them making, I remember them making mince pies, and all you needed was a loaf of white bread, and you cut out the bread in a circle, and then you put mincemeat, which is mincemeat, like mince pie, mincemeat in it, and then put another circle on the top, and put a little bit of milk on it, put it in the oven, and you got a mince pie. So that was something that was accessible. I remember asking my mum to get some mince meat, and it would probably be 10p, from the cheap shop. So we could do things like that and make mince pies. I would do it on my own. Or one time I saw them spinning sugar on some show. Oh my God, I can't believe I did this. But I got sugar. I put sugar into a bowl, I think with some water, and I just poured the whole thing out on the countertop, thinking it would make, I don't know, sweets or something. I don't know. But it was just rock hard, like cement on the countertop, and I had to chip away with it like a screwdriver. And my mum come home from work, and she's like, "What the hell are you doing?" There's so many times my mum came home from work, and it was like, "What are you doing?" Oh my God, also so many things. So yeah, so it was fun, and it was, a form of entertainment. But also food, it was surrounded by negative emotions. So I was not to eat too much food because the food had to last, because we were poor, because there were 6 of us in the household, and my mum worked part-time in a corner store making minimum wage or less. And my dad didn't work, and any money that he got was going to his alcohol. So we had a little bit of food, and so you don't eat too much of it because everyone needs to eat. And also don't eat too much food, because if you do, then you'll become fat, and being fat is bad. And so I had to be stealthy. I had to be quick about getting food, because if I didn't get it quick enough, there would be none left. And also I would desire it, and I would have to be quick, go get it, store it, hide it, because also one of my siblings was bulimic. And so you would never safe in the idea that you had food, or you had access to food, because we didn't have access to food as often. And if there was food, then it would be gone. And so it was kind of like very scary, very unsafe feeling around food, because I wanted it, but it wasn't there. And if it was there, I shouldn't have it. Not too much of it, just a little bit, So it's very, very complicated. I also experienced trauma around food. And therefore it was highly emotional. So, for example, one time, I don't know how this happened, but we managed to get Cocoa Pops. I don't know what you call them in North America. It's Rice Krispies with chocolate on, It definitely wasn't Kellogg's brand. It would have been like, No Frills brand. So we had Cocoa Pops, and it was this was just like fucking Christmas, right? And we had Cocoa Pops, and I remember having a bowl and then saying to my mum, "Can I have another bowl?" And I don't know what was going on with my mum at the time, but her reaction was, "No, you can't." And then I must have been like, "Please, please, please, please." And she slapped me, and shut me in the kitchen and kind of threw the Cocoa Pops at me and said, eat as much as you like, because you know you're, and the idea was like, you're so greedy, you have to be separated from the family, sit on the cold kitchen floor and eat the Cocoa Pops. And I remember I poured myself another bowl and was crying into my Cocoa Pops as I was eating them, because they were providing me comfort and they were providing me a little bit of joy after being rejected and slapped by my mum, which was not appropriate. And I don't know what was going on with her at the time. Her now hearing this story, she's really upset by it. Another thing I remember happening, trauma around food, was it being my birthday, going downtown, because that's what I would do on my birthday. My brother would sometimes give me some money because he was working at the time, being a bricklayer, and so he'd be like, Victor, come here, make me a cup of tea. He'd call me Victor, and I'd make him a cup of tea, and then he'd give me like a handful of coins and notes and stuff, and it'd be like, I remember in my diary writing, John gave me £68, and that was a lot. Like, even now, £68 is a lot. And so to, you know, young Victoria, I was literally 10 exclamation marks that he gave me this money. And another time he gave me £72. So I went downtown shopping and buying stupid shit like pens with bubbles in, with smiley faces on, and stuff from this stupid shop called Balagan in Peterborough. Any Peterboreans will remember that shop from the noughties, Balagan. Anyway, and I remember one time, doing my birthday, come home excited. I think my mum had made a cake, and there was going to be a birthday dinner, and coming home and the cake and the dinner being eaten by the sibling that had bulimia. And so, you know, this day, which was very special, and food being special to me, and the response kind of just being like, well, you know, my mum, because my mum's stressed out, like, well, you know, what am I going to do about it? And she made another dinner, so we didn't go hungry, but it was kind of not as good, and there was no cake. And there was other, you know, traumatic experience around food, but also I had some really lovely experiences around food. So I remember one time my dad took me downstairs, and my dad was always a source of fear, and, you know, he was scary. He was, you know, strict dad and mean and cruel. But one time he took me downstairs and he said, I'm going to make you a Richard Special. And I'm like, what's a Richard Special? And I think he just made the name up on the spot, but it stuck. And it was chocolate milk in this little brown plastic cup, you know, the types of cups that you'd get from a vending machine. I think there were cups that used to have soup in. I think he got it off of like a back of a lorry or something. It would have like little bits of dried soup in. Anyway, so these little small brown cups, put chocolate milk in, cream on the top, and then a shortbread finger, half of it crumbled on top of the cream and then half of it stuck inside the milk. And this stuff, like, we would not have access to this chocolate milk cream shortbread biscuit, because my dad would have that stuff. Like, he would be allowed the good stuff and we weren't allowed it. And so he made me one, and he shared this special moment with me of love and curiosity and acceptance, and it was really nice. And he continued making Richard Specials for us. And you know, my dad had trouble connecting with us for many reasons. I think he had lots of different mental health issues, and I think, you know, now he's died, looking back, I think he had autism and things like that. But there were ways in which he could connect with us in a structured manner, and this was one of those. It was with food. So, highly emotional thing for me, and also it was the little amount of control that I had in my life. I lived in an unsafe and dangerous neighborhood. Trouble with the locals in the area. A lot of people fighting outside, and there was a local paedophile that targeted me and targeted other children, would come to my back garden, would hide in various areas in the neighborhood, would hide in bushes and indecently expose himself. And being in the home wasn't safe either. You know, being my dad being very scary and a bully, and my mum being very stressed out and anxious, and because the paedophile was coming to my back garden, so I didn't feel safe in the house from anything. But food would give me a little bit of joy, you know. And I had friends at school, and you know, but I was a nerd. I was a nerd. I was such a nerd. I was such a nerd. In primary school, we would have our uniform was just like, you know, a jumper and trousers and whatever. And then secondary school, you would wear a blazer. But in primary school, I don't know how I got my hands on a blazer. In primary school, I would be wearing a blazer, and the teacher would be always like, "You like take the blazer off," and I'd be like, "No, I want to wear a blazer." I was very extra. So at school I was a bit of a nerd and sometimes was bullied, but you know, nothing extreme. But I hated my body, and what did I have to cope with all this? I had TV, which is amazing, and food, and that brought me joy and comfort. So I learned about eating food was bad for me for many reasons, but also was good. And I was already fat at that stage, and so I better not eat any more food. But I would sometimes sneak food. Now I know why I would sneak food, because why the fuck would I not sneak food in such a precarious situations? And I would sneak what I would think, oh, this is so much food that I'm sneaking, and it was just tiny amounts of food. And even if it was large amounts of food, that's still fine too. And I would late at night I'd sneak into the kitchen and be watching shows on TV and have a little bit of food and be like, oh my god, I feel so bad. And feeling tremendous guilt, and would hide the evidence. And but I had this pull, like I was so distracted by the idea of sneaking food and getting food. Like I'd be there watching television, and it'd be like, you know, a voice in my head be like, go get something to eat, go on. And I'd be like, no, stop it, no, I can't, I've already had dinner, go on, just get one. Oh, get one, come back. Oh, that was delicious. Eat it quietly so you don't wake up your mum. Go get another. No, I can't. You know, and to the point where I couldn't watch television because I'd be so distracted by my thoughts. And I know a lot of people have experienced that too, and interpreted it in a certain way that's maybe not accurate. The way that I interpreted it, that what I was so out of control, that there was something wrong with me, that I was sick. I was bad. One time, to counteract this stuff, I stopped eating in the day. So in the morning, I would get a packed lunch from my mum, so a sandwich and a penguin bar or maybe a wagon wheel. Gross, disgusting. I'd hated wagon wheels, and a packet of crisps. So I would eat that in the morning and not eat all day long. And I would run up and down the corridor at home to try and exercise off this food that I was eating. And so it was kind of, you know, it wasn't a full blown at that time. I don't think it was kind of disordered, but it wasn't, you know, it was getting there. It was getting there. So when my mum left at 17, she left the country, and I was living on my own. Eventually became homeless, but I was living on my own, and I had more freedom around food. Like there was no one there to see what I was eating, and so I ate what I wanted. And I began what I now know was healing my relationship with food. And I had a job as a cleaner. I was still going to school, but then I would clean the school after school, and so I had a little bit of money, and so I was able to buy myself a little bit of food. At lunchtime I was given free school meals, and then in the break times I was able to buy myself food, and I was feeding myself, and it was great. And not to say that I wasn't being fed when I was a child. I was being fed. Like we never, well, that's not true. We never went without food. We did sometimes, but we always had dinner, right? It wasn't that we were so in poverty that we didn't have dinner. We did. But I was able to feed myself extra food, or when I was hungry, I was able to get food, or when I was thirsty, I was able to drink what I wanted, you know? And that was so healing and wonderful. But I then met the guy that was the abusive boyfriend. So the guy I was with for 2 or 3 years, I was 17, he was 30. And he started commenting on my body and what I was eating, saying it was wrong and too much. And it wasn't wrong and too much. He was wrong. And he would ask me, like, why does my body look the way it does? And me never really having a boyfriend before and him being 30, I thought, well, he knows what he's talking about. If he thinks that my body is bad, well, it clearly is. He's been around the block. He's seen women naked before. And so, therefore, my body is fucked up. Yeah, eye roll. And I started to be scared about eating in front of him and eating only small portions to win his approval. And he was an alcoholic, and he would bribe me to go to the pub with him. And he'd be like, come on, let's go to the pub, let's sit in the pub. He wouldn't be like, let's sit in the pub all day, but that's what would happen. And I wouldn't want to do it because I didn't like watching him just get drunk, because I wouldn't really drink. So he would bribe me with food because he knew that I was so desperate for food. And so he'd say, we can split a sandwich at the pub. I remember being like, this feels so luxurious, having half a sandwich, because I was so denied of food at that point. And I'd be like, do you know what? Fuck it. I'd be like, I'm so bad. I'm encouraging him to drink because I can't control it, because I'm so desperate to eat, because I'm so greedy. But fuck, I was desperate to eat because I needed to eat, you know? There you can hear Douglas' little tip taps. You have a little sit down, Dougie. Oh, he's going to his cage. He's going to his little house. Okay. Yeah. So I was fucking hungry. So the natural response to his judgment and telling me what to eat and whatnot was to eat in secret. Of course it was. And to eat large amounts. And to eat the foods that he told me were wrong. Of course it was. Of course it was a great way for me to cope with this abusive relationship, because that's not the only way he was abusive. He was abusive in so many different ways. So many different ways. And it was fucked up. And I remember on Sunday, he would work overnight on a Sunday, and I would look forward to this so much, because I'd be free from him for a little bit. And so I remember saying goodbye to him at the door. And so often, the first thing that I did was go straight to the toilet, because I needed to do a poo. And I wasn't allowed to poo in front of him, because he'd make a big song and dance about it, being like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. That's so disgusting. And so I wouldn't do it. And so I'd be like desperate for a poo all day long, and he'd leave at 4:00. This is years ago, and I still remember it because it was such a big deal. And so I'd do a poo more often than not. And then I would put my shoes on and I'd go to the corner store and get all this wonderful food that I needed and wanted and desired. And would go home and eat the food the whole time, being terrified that he would come home, that there'd be an issue at work, or he'd feel sick and he'd come home early, unexpectedly. And so I would like double lock all the doors, so that if he did come home, he'd have to knock, and I'd go and like take the chain off the door, but still being worried that if he did come home, then he'd see all this evidence. And then I would hide the evidence. When I was finished eating whatever food I had, I would hide the evidence, and I'd go to neighbours' bins and put the rubbish into their bin, because he would check our bin. And he would check because I couldn't eat the stuff that was in the house already, because we didn't have any desirable food. We had very basic things, diet things, basically, because he'd put me on a diet, obviously. And I couldn't eat, like, if there was anything, bread or whatever, I couldn't eat that, because he'd count the number of slices. He'd measure, he'd eyeball how much milk or whatever. And if there was an unexpected amount gone, the amount that he'd allotted me to eat, then I'd be in trouble. And so I couldn't eat the food in the house. So I'd have to go out and get my own food. And I would do this anytime I got a chance. Anytime that I was alone in the house and he wasn't there. And what I thought was going on was food addiction. Obviously, right? Obviously, I had never heard of binge eating disorder. I was so in diet culture, and I thought that needing and wanting to eat these certain types of foods meant that there was something wrong with you. Why can't I only just eat, a salad leaf in the morning and be happy for the rest of the day? I thought that him telling me what foods I should eat was him just wanting me to be healthy. I thought him counting and measuring what food was in their house was to help me not be a food addict. I thought him putting me on a diet and telling me my body was wrong was because he just wanted the best for me. And this is an extreme example, right? Like, not everyone's going to be in an abusive relationship where food is used as a control mechanism. But this is exactly what diet culture is doing to all of us. Diet culture is saying, your body is wrong, don't eat that, it's bad, I just want you to be healthy, you eat too much food, I care about your health. And exactly what he was doing, but not in those exact words, but those messages are coming, and yes, in those exact words too. And it drives us to being disordered around food and believing our bodies are wrong. And I thought my ex was right to treat me the way that he did. And I thought that diet culture was right. And both were abusive. It is not okay. So yeah, I thought I was addicted to food. He was an alcoholic. And my character flaw, the way that I saw that, was that I was a food addict. There was both, he was loving me even though I was addicted to food and was fat. And I thought I needed to go to Overeaters Anonymous. I thought he needs to go to Alcoholics Anonymous and I need to go to Overeaters Anonymous, OA. And I just thought about this, like, I need to fix this. I need to stop being so obsessed with food. And I was too scared to go. Because this would mean that I'd have to admit to my ex that I had been eating food, because I'd managed to keep this behavior secret. Although I think he probably suspected it. And so I just suffered with this cycle. And I'm actually very pleased that I didn't go to Overeaters Anonymous, because that would have just been another level of teaching me fucked up shit. Yeah. So the reason now that I know that I wasn't a food addict, because food addiction and sugar addiction, it's not a thing. It's a thing in regards to food and sugar can bring you pleasure. And it's the exact same pleasure center that is lit up in our brains when we do anything that is nice, like stroking a dog or watching a funny TV show or seeing our friends or having a really good poo. And we need to do it. So you wouldn't be like, oh my God, I'm so addicted to breathing. I'm addicted to blinking. We don't pathologize these normal human functions. And what do you think would happen if we did? What do you think would happen if society said to you, you should stop blinking so much? We should all stop blinking so much. We blink far too often. Try and not blink for 2 minutes, okay? And, if you did try to not blink for a couple of minutes, I don't know how long can go without blinking. I'm like trying it now and my eyes are already getting like funny feeling and I need to blink. And afterwards you would blink a lot because it's a normal reaction. Like if someone told you don't drink, after not drinking for a while, you would be like gulping water down. Someone told you don't breathe as much, you'd be gasping for air. And then if we had pathologized blinking, we'd be like, see, told you, can't stop blinking. Look at you just blinking all over the place. I told you not to blink for a minute. And, as soon as my back was turned, you were just blinking. And blinking so much. Blinking really deeply. It's silly, but, we pathologize eating food. And blinking gives us pleasure and breathing gives us pleasure. And a lot of the times we don't think about it. We're not like every breath being like, oh, that was such a good breath. But, sometimes when you're, out of breath and you're take a deep breath in. There's like that level of satisfaction, and obviously food gives you a lot more because it's more complex and it's social, and we're getting a lot of needs met when we eat food. And also with traditional addiction, the more that you're exposed to the addictive substance, the more you experience addictive behaviors. So let me repeat that. With traditional addiction, the more that you're exposed to the addictive substance, the more that you experience addictive behaviors. With supposed food addiction, the more that you're exposed to food, the less behaviors you experience. And this is, physically and mentally allowing yourself to eat food. The moment that you physically and mentally allow yourself to eat food, those addictive type feelings and compulsions, they begin to dissipate. And now it's a process, it's not, one day you don't wake up and be like, I'm allowing myself all food. And then all of a sudden you're like, I no longer feel addicted. But it's a process of learning that it's okay to eat. It's okay to blink. You've experienced difficult things around this. Sometimes a lot of traumatic experiences going on with this. And so it's healing. And again, yes, there's no studies to show that food is addictive the same way that other things are. But what studies have shown is that our reward centers light up in the same way as if you hugged someone that you loved, in the same way as if you're, having a nice walk on a sunny day, And we don't see those things as nefarious. It's not a bad thing that we get pleasure from things that we need to do in life, So yeah, you're not addicted. You're not addicted. I'm not addicted. We're not addicted. So, and if you're still thinking, I don't know. Imagine if whatever food is your kind of food that you feel like you're very addicted to. Imagine if I came to you right now and I said, okay, right, you can only eat this thing. Let's say chocolate. Okay, you can only eat chocolate. And if you eat anything but chocolate, that's really bad. It's really unhealthy for you if you eat anything but chocolate. And your house, I filled it with chocolate, top to bottom. Turn on the tap, chocolate milk comes out. Open the cupboards, filled with different chocolate products, a fridge too, freezer, everywhere chocolate. And to begin with, you'll be like, fuck yes. And you'll eat the chocolate and you'll be like, oh my God, this is fucking heaven. I love it. And maybe by the end of the day, you'd be like, oh, this is cool. Next day, you'd be like, chocolate for breakfast. And you'd have chocolate. By the end of the week, you'd be like, do you know what? I really fancy, I want to go to the food court and get a nice crisp salad. And I'm there watching you being like, oh, you're breaking your chocolate diet, are you? I thought you said you wanted to be healthy. And I can't believe you're doing this. And then you'll feel guilty. And so you might next time sneak, make sure I don't see you eating that salad. Those cold tomatoes and that crisp lettuce. Oh, it tastes so good. I think I'm addicted. Are you addicted to salads? You sneak around eating salads whenever you get the chance. Right? And now this is extreme. That's not going to happen unless you go to Charlie's Chocolate Factory. What I'm saying is you're not like, oh my god, I need this forever. It's like it's when you have access to it, those behaviors go away. When you're told that you shouldn't be doing something and it's so terrible, then you want to do it more. And when you restrict yourself, it's a natural reaction to need to go and then get that thing, eat that thing, whatever it is. Okay? So what I was experiencing when I felt addicted to food was deep restriction, abuse, and gaslighting. And you know how I cured this so-called food addiction? In actuality, it was binge eating disorder. I dumped the boyfriend and began eating food again. Now, after I dumped him, I was all over the place, right? And I was eating food, but then being like, oh my God, see, I'm not with him anymore, and look at me eating food. He was right. It was really complicated and difficult. So it wasn't like dumped him the next day. I'm running through fields, eating pizza and, giggling and stuff, it wasn't like that. It was a slow process. And still, even though my binge eating behaviors subsided, I still was very much in diet culture and very much believed that he was probably right about me being so greedy and horrible, and my body is pretty much fucked up and it is wrong to eat this food and that food. But I was able to start bringing joy and permission back in. And I remember very clearly walking down the street with my sister, one of my sisters, and had we just gone to the shop, and I'd bought Cadbury fingers. I don't know if you get them in North America, but they're like little shortbread fingers covered in chocolate. And I bought these, and I was eating them as we were walking home, and I was like, this is so amazing. I'm allowed to eat these things, and no one is going to tell me that I shouldn't. Side note, yes they will, but not right there and then. I didn't have an abusive boyfriend saying you shouldn't eat that. And I was just like, this is amazing. And my sister was like, well, yeah, you can eat it, no big deal. Yeah, pretty cool. And it was kind of bringing back that joy and permission into food. And lo and behold, did I need to binge eat as much anymore? No. But obviously that internal shame was still there. I didn't have that abusive partner, but I was, abusing myself by saying you shouldn't. But it kind of slowly subsided. And of course, still a victim of diet culture. And so my eating wasn't free from disorder. And it's okay to binge, by the way. It's okay to binge. And I feel like it was wonderful that I had binge eating disorder as a way to cope. What an incredible way my brain and body was rebelling against this abusive asshole. As soon as his back was turned, my brain was giving him a big fuck you with my behavior, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it at the time that is what I was doing. I was being so rebellious. I was doing it in the best way. I was coping in the best way. This was giving me a little bit of joy and happiness and a way to cope. And yes, it wasn't the best way to cope long term, but it was what was accessible to me at the time. And it is what I was able to go to. And because of that, I was able to survive. I was able to survive this torturous existence that I was living at that time. So thank you to binge eating disorder for that. You helped me when I needed it, and you served your purpose at that time. Eventually, there came to a stage where disordered eating didn't serve me anymore, and it wasn't the best option for me. And I found different ways to cope. But if in a day-to-day life you feel like, you know what, I'm feeling a bit down and I want to eat some food because it makes me feel good, fine, go for it, great. If that's what's accessible to you and that's what works, and do it, it's all good. So I'm not addicted to food, never was. I did have an eating disorder, undiagnosed. I was abused in many ways. And my eating disorder protected me and helped me cope with the worst time in my life. And I'm thankful I found a way to survive, because what was the alternative? Yeah. So, in conclusione, you're not addicted to food or sugar. Also, don't even get me started on the kids and sugar thing. There's no studies to show that kids have a reaction to sugar in the way that society tells us they do, and parents' anecdotal observations. Many parents are like, no, that's not true. When I give my kids sugar, they go wild or whatever, and all sorts of things. But there's actually no scientific evidence to show that. But like, we demonize this stuff, like, don't give them that, because don't give them any dyes, or don't give them, whatever, because blah blah blah, Oh, but with that, make sure that you give them disordered eating ideas, and make sure you tell them to be scared of food. Yeah. So, yeah, there we go. Hope that wasn't too heavy for you. And if you're feeling feelings after this, then why don't you just go and have some self-care time? I am going to go to the shop right now to get some toilet roll, because I love a good poo. Get some toilet roll and get something for my lunch, because it's lunchtime now. Well, 1:42, a bit later than lunch, but yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And it's sun shining and it's good and blah, blah, blah. Hey, if you ever have a question that you want to send for me to answer on the podcast, then keep it to yourself, because I don't want to know. Jokes. Just message me anywhere. Email me, victoria@fiercefatty.com. Send me a message on the grams. Don't send me a message on LinkedIn. I never go on LinkedIn. It feels like my past life is on LinkedIn. Because I used to do recruitment, right, for years. And so I used to be on LinkedIn every day, like messaging people saying, do you want a job? And now I'm like never on LinkedIn, because it gave me bad feelings to go on there. But then sometimes I'll check and it'll be like someone I knew from years ago being like, hey, do you want to connect? And it's been like 4 months since I checked my messages, and I look like a big, massive bell end. And so, yeah, don't message me on LinkedIn, because you probably won't get a response for months and months and months, instead of days in other channels. Okay, thanks for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Fierce Fatty Podcast. Thanks for listening to the episode. And if you feel ready to get serious about this work and want to know when the doors open to Fierce Fatty Academy, which is my signature program where I teach all about how to overcome your fat phobic beliefs and learn to love your fat body, then go to fiercefatty.com/waitlist. Again, that is fiercefatty.com/waitlist to get your name on the waitlist for when Fierce Fatty Academy, my signature program, opens.